2016 has been a long and difficult year, but December is here at last. Another Star Wars movie is coming out, which can only mean one thing. Another season of Star Wars book reviews! Last year's Star Wars book reviews were some of the very first videos that I posted on YouTube, and I'm glad that so many people liked them, they got a lot of good feedback, and seeing how that Rogue One is coming out in cinemas this week, it only makes sense for me to bring back this series. I mean, I like doing these videos, people like watching them, I get more views around this time of year, what's not to love? But anyway, just like last year, I'm going to review 3 different Star Wars novels, all of them officially canon and related to either Rogue One or the new trilogy in some way or another. Now, the Star Wars books from last year were all pretty good for different reasons, especially considering they were all aimed at different age groups, but the biggest standout of them all, in my opinion, was Aftermath by Chuck Wendig, which dared to explore the grim topic of a galaxy divided after the fall of the Empire while focusing on a whole bunch of brand new, exciting characters and telling a completely different story. And today, we're going to take a look at the second part of this trilogy, released earlier this year, Aftermath: Life Debt. As the New Republic continues their attempt to restore balance and peace across the galaxy, Han Solo embarks on an impromptu mission to help Chewbacca free the Wookiees' home planet of Kashyyyk from Imperial slavery. But their attempt at liberation goes horribly wrong after the smugglers are led into an ambush, resulting in Chewie being captured and Han disappearing altogether. A distressed Leia calls upon Nora Wexley and her group of bounty hunters to search for her missing husband, despite internal torment among a few members, as to whether to continue working together as a team. Meanwhile, Grand Admiral Ray Sloane is under the thumb of her mysterious advisor, Gallius Rax, who has assembled all the surviving Imperial leaders and is slowly attempting to rebuild their scattered empire. But as Sloane grows more and more suspicious of Rax's secrecy and distrustful of what little remaining allies she has left, she embarks on a solo quest to discover the truth about Rax and what the Empire is really planning next. Little do either Sloane or Nora know, however, the true depth of the hidden danger that awaits the galaxy, and it seems that the Rebels' search for Han Solo is only the beginning of a much greater conflict, one which may divide both the Republic, the Empire, and even Nora's own family. Like I mentioned earlier, I personally thought that Aftermath was the strongest of all the Star Wars books released last year, although I did notice a few criticisms from some other reviewers. Namely that there were too many seemingly unrelated interludes, and the story's attempt at realism was a little too on the nose, and I guess some people didn't like that this series was focusing on a whole bunch of brand new characters they weren't already familiar with. And while I can't say that I agree with all of those complaints, I do have to admit that Life Debt is a vast improvement from its predecessor, at least from a storytelling perspective. The first novel was filled with a lot of build-up, and it spent most of its time introducing all the characters and establishing the universe, with less focus on an obvious linear narrative and more focus on world building. Granted, Wendig is very, very good at world building, and thankfully the sequel doesn't completely hold off in that particular strength of his, while also giving him a chance to show off his writing skills in other departments. Like the way that the narrative structure flows between a variety of different atmospheres while still feeling grounded, and how each character gets their time in the spotlight in a way that's clear to the reader but doesn't monopolise the whole book. And it's for those reasons why Life Debt feels a lot more like a proper Star Wars novel. Another great strength about this book is how it successfully manages to incorporate the world of what we've already seen of Star Wars with the world of these new characters. It feels more natural this time round because we actually get to see our main protagonist, Nora Wexley, interact more with classic characters like Wedge Antilles and Princess Leia and Han Solo, and it feels more realistic and not like someone wrote lengthy Star Wars fanfiction. I especially enjoy the scenes with Nora and Wedge Antilles together because a little bit of a romance blooms between them and it's very cute, but then things get complicated much later on for reasons that I can't give away because spoilers. But yeah, the world of Star Wars as depicted in this book feels very fast, yet not too overwhelming or distracting at the same time. There's still the occasional interlude just like in the previous book, but this time they feel more relevant to the story and focus more on characters or worlds that most Star Wars fans would already be familiar with, including a few references to The Force Awakens. These include a brief cameo from Maz Kanata and her castle/cantina, as well as a hint to the origins of General Hux, and a lot of villainous build-up to what I presume will lead into the First Order in some way. And speaking of the villains, the entire subplot featuring Rey Sloane and her rocky relationship with the Empire was probably my favourite part of the whole book. It had a really intriguing mystery element to it, and I liked seeing the baddie of the previous story undergoing some character development. Admiral Rey Sloane was already a standout in Aftermath. Her unwavering determination and loyalty to her cause made her an excellent antagonist, and like I said in my original review, a great foil for Nora. In Life Debt, she's still trying to rebuild the Empire into the glorious, perfect utopia she still imagines it to be, but now she's started to realise that Gallius Rex, another admiral who appeared in the epilogue of the last book, is the one really pulling the strings behind the whole operation and using what little remains of the Empire to his own advantage. It becomes very clear that Gallius has been manipulating Sloane into doing his bidding, all the while making her think that she's still in charge of everything. But all that soon changes as Sloane starts to grow wary of Gallius and her fellow Imperials, so she goes off on her own path, trying to get to the bottom of what the hell's really going on with the Empire, yet at the same time her devotion to their original ideals means that she still has to play along to Gallius's game, which makes her conflict very compelling and her character growth even more interesting to read. As I said before, she was already a good villain, and now that I'm starting to get a little bit of an anti-hero vibe from her, I'll be interested to see how her story develops in the next book. Nora Wexley and the rest of the heroes are also a very colourful cast of characters, and I found everybody's dynamic to be very enjoyable. Because even though all these rebels are supposed to be a team now, they're still very reluctant about properly working together and prefer to do things either in their own unorthodox way, like Jaz Mari the Bounty Hunter, or like the ex-Imperial Sinjir Raphaelis are at an existential crossroads in their life and unsure about their place in the galaxy. It makes for some rather fascinating emotional conflict between the characters, although I do have to admit that I find the whole group of heroes who don't always get along and fight all the time, but in the end they have to work together, they realise they're a family thing, a little cliche now. But it's not too annoying though. The drama is pretty downplayed for the most part, and the character interactions between everyone are still great. I liked Jaz and Sinjir's casual friendship. I especially loved the mother and son relationship between Nora and Temin Wexley, who I only just found out recently was actually in The Force Awakens as an adult. You see that guy? That was him! Yeah! Anyway, Nora and Temin have a fantastically written relationship, just like in the last book, and probably one of my favourite moments in Life Debt is this passage from early on in the story in which Nora tells her son the following: "I just want you to be good with yourself and to know where you belong, not where you think other people want you to belong, but where you really belong, in here." She puts her hand on his chest and he makes a goofy face because this is really very mawkish and sentimental. They both know it. "You're sticking with Jaz. You're not a bounty hunter. You don't have to be like her. You can be a soldier, but..." Again, she bites her tongue and growls past it. "You know what? You don't have to be a soldier either. I just want you to be you and not worry about what the rest of the galaxy thinks you should be." It's not a huge scene, but there's something about it which was really moving and really sums up how good the Nora and Temin story in this book is. The way it develops over the course of the narrative is also really amazing, but once again, the way it develops over the course of the narrative is also really amazing, but once again I can't talk too much about it because spoilers! In fact, I would have to say that the strongest aspect of the Aftermath series so far has always been the dynamic between the characters. Not just the new ones, but also the old characters from the previous Star Wars movies. We see Leia struggle to cope with the absence of her husband and grow frustrated with the restrictiveness of the New Republic. There's a good scene featuring her and Mon Mothma in which they debate over how exactly to help other worlds still under Imperial regime, such as Chewbacca's home planet. Mon Mothma is more focused on peaceful negotiations and providing aid through back channels, while Leia is determined to actually go there and do something and properly fight for injustice in a more physical way. It's an interesting debate, and it seems to represent very well how these newest set of Star Wars stories, both The Force Awakens and the new expanded universe of books, seem to be adding a touch of realism to the world these characters live in and the conflicts that they have to face, while still holding on to the altruistic belief of good triumphing over evil, which made the original space opera so iconic. And no more is this present than in this book, especially much later on, where a lot of things happens and things seem to deviate from the original plot of Nora and her crew searching for Han Solo, but not in a bad way at all. They do find Han and Chewie, and we see the Millennium Falcon and the Wookiee planet Kashyyyk. Insert obvious Star Wars The Holiday Special joke here. But the climax of Live Debt focuses both on the slave rebellion at Kashyyyk and a grand celebration being held by the New Republic to commemorate the impending peacetime, the latter of which doesn't quite go according to plan. Apologies if I keep being vague on later plot developments, but to go into further detail about them would quite literally be spoiling huge chunks of the book. So let's just say that a lot of shit goes down and you'll be dying to know what happens next. But believe me when I say that no matter your thoughts on the first Aftermath book, Life Debt is a worthy successor and a more polished sequel. I think that the amount of secrecy last year to prevent important plot elements from The Force Awakens from being revealed definitely affected some of the new expanded universe stories in terms of their scope. Not properly explaining how or why the galaxy has changed, or the motivations of certain characters, or even their identities in some cases. But now that the movie's out, creative freedom has been more or less restored, and we get to see a lot more details about everything than we would have normally. Most of the questions have been answered, and you get to see certain puzzle pieces fit together. For example, Leia's conflict with the Republic is almost definitely foreshadowing her eventually breaking away from them to form the Resistance, as seen in The Force Awakens. The world building feels a lot more impressive in this book for that particular reason, as it gives Chuck Wendig a chance to take his little stories universe in a bolder, more extensive direction than what we've seen before, and that's definitely a good thing. Aftermath Life Debt is filled with a variety of different story elements, all of them vastly different, yet enough to please any Star Wars fan. The political intrigue and complicated relationships within both factions is countered with intense intergalactic action sequences and entertaining character interactions, and is also an ongoing message about familial bonds and what it truly means to be part of something, which gives the book a great sense of heart. The narrative heads in several different directions without becoming convoluted, and there's a few exciting twists and turns before the climax even arrives. Needless to say, Life Debt is further proof of the potential for more brilliant original stories in the Star Wars universe, even more so with the arrival of Rogue One, which is why I decided to cover this particular book first for this new batch of Star Wars book reviews. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and comment on this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and why not check out my review of the previous Aftermath book from last year. Come back tomorrow where I'll be reviewing Bloodline by Claudia Gray, which tells the story of Leia before the events of The Force Awakens. But until then, this is Poindexta, and this is the end of the Star Wars book review.